Welcome to Eugenio Maslowski in Positive. The word present also means gift. Today is a gift of God. I invite you to do something special. Enjoy the present. With Fray Matt King. First of all, I would like to welcome you, Father. It's a real pleasure for me to have you in my podcast, and you are one of my first guests.
Well, thank you, Eugenio. I'm honored to be here, brother.
The idea is that when we have these times of obscurantism, that we have a lot of negative things going around in the world, it's the time to come with some positive messages.
Amen to that.
This is the reason why I decided to create Eugenio Maslowski in Positive. And I found something interesting, that in English, you have blessing in disguise as an expression that explains what we're doing, which is sometimes we find that there are some stories that they start like looking something negative, and then they become a positive experience. So at this moment, I very briefly will explain who you are. And in that case, if the people would like to find more information about you, they can go to the Diocese, or they can go to the Assumption Church in Jacksonville, Florida, and they will find that you are the vicar of the Assumption Church. Is a Catholic church in Jacksonville, and your name is Matt King.
Yes, sir.
Which is great. Okay, that means that you are descending of the king.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I work for the king, though.
Yeah, you work for the king. Okay, then I would like to see, because in a person like you, there was a call at a certain point of your life. And how that call, you were able to listen that it was a positive call for you to become a priest.
Yeah, it was, it happened my senior year of high school is really when I got, actually might have been, it was my junior year when I really heard and felt the call. I mean, in high school, I was in a band. I played lead guitar in a band, had longer hair. And I was playing golf, and really had these different just desires and motivations, and, was going down. I wasn't a bad kid or anything like that, but church, the faith, the Lord definitely were not the priorities of my life. And God came into my life in a very powerful way. I just attended a Catholic youth retreat. It was like a one-day thing. And I remember just being zapped by the Lord, just having this powerful experience that set in motion the path to priesthood. Never would have thought I would have ended up here. Never would have thought I would have been a priest. Never thought about it when I was a young child. But the Lord, it's the way that he works. And I'm so grateful for it. I wouldn't want to do anything else in my life, honestly.
And that young child was studying where?
So I grew up in St. Augustine, okay. Elkton, which is a tiny little town outside St. Augustine, but I always say St. Augustine.
So it's the oldest city in the United States.
That's it. Yes, sir. And mucho español in St. Augustine,
Yes,
so.
And actually, that is one of the places where I run my Hispanic Film Festival.
Oh, really?
Yes, because it's about the Hispanic culture. It's called, right now it's called Toro Film Festival. This year we will celebrate it here in Jacksonville, and the good thing is that Jacksonville University gave me 3 scholarships for the winners from anywhere in the world, and the 3 scholarships are to study film in the Jacksonville University.
That is awesome, man.
So
I'd love to visit when it's in St. Augustine.
Yeah, it will be great. So let's talk a little bit about your blessings in disguise. You mentioned that you had like 3 levels of experience in your life. One of them was light, another one was some sort of medium, and then one was a little bit more heavy. Mm-hmm. Okay, why wouldn't we start with the light one?
That sounds good to me. So to continue and kind of connect the dots, I entered seminary right out of high school. So I have this powerful encounter with God, feel the call to priesthood, and I just jump right in. And so jump into the seminary, which is a place where we study to be Catholic priests at 18 years old. And it's a 9-year program. So it's 4 years of philosophy, then 5 years of theology. My 4 years of philosophy, my first were spent down in Miami at St. John Vianney College Seminary. And, I remember my first year being assigned, somehow I made the Scola, which is like the music group. And we had to sing for Mass every day. There was a daily Mass, and like maybe twice a month, I would be assigned as a cantor, so to lead the music. And I remember I would get so nervous. I'm 18 years old. The whole community's there. We're with 100 seminarians. There are about 20 priests every day. And so, there was one day where it came around and I was leading and I'm nervous. I'm like waiting for my cue to jump in. Mass was in Spanish that day. My Spanish at that point was muy mala. And so I remember muy malo, I should say. I remember jumping in at the wrong time. And so I started singing in the middle of the service at the wrong time. The priest looked straight up at me. All the eyes in the entire church come looking right at me. And I was like, I was humiliated. It was a terrible experience. But and I remember going to one of the priests at the seminary after that experience and telling him, listen, I'm not cut out to sing. I'm not cut out to lead. I want to back off. Like I want to get permission not to do that anymore. And he told me, he said, Matt, a lot of growth happens when we go through these kind of situations and scenarios where you're being stretched, and it changed. Honestly, I learned something from that experience because later on, I ended up, about a year later, I was assigned as head of music, and it just kind of flowed naturally. Didn't even think twice about it. I was able to cantor and lead without any problem after that. It just took a little bit of time to get
in Spanish.
In Spanish, even, believe it or not. I know, as bad as my Spanish is in Spanish.
But it's different when you sing when you talk, right?
Totally. What was it? Santo, Santo, Santo. That's what. Yeah, I remember leading it. But and so learning from that experience, what I really took away from it was that there are blessings in disguise, but also anytime I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing. It's like this being stretched, uncomfortable in things that are, like that. And so I made it a point that in the seminary, as I was going through those 9 years, to take advantage. Like when I would be offered a position in the seminary of leadership, or if I was asked to give a talk or one of those things, I would say yes, because I knew it would help me grow, sure. And so that was like one of those experiences where I didn't think it would end up well. I was like, there's no way. I mean, I can't focus during Mass. I'm not praying. I'm thinking about the music the whole time. I was really obsessed.
But really, this is one of the interesting things when you're a young kid entering the seminar, because when you become already what you call the elder or the late vocation,
yeah,
the people is already different because it's mature. But when you're a kid, you're really jumping in something which will require a lot of sacrifice, because one of the things that I find in the priests that really love the ministry is your dedication and your way of moving away from the noise that involves all of us during the day life. It's a very interesting how you are, take away from all that experience, those experiences that the youth celebrate, and you keep the faith, and you're really getting married to the Lord,
to His church, absolutely. And it's amazing to me. You're absolutely right about the noise. Our world is filled with so much noise. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time. We constantly are bombarded with things, but it's important to be able to enter into that silence. That's where we encounter God. That's where we discover ourselves too, is in the silence.
Definitely.
And and that's certainly been the case for my own life. And through prayer and meditation, I've come to know the Lord in myself.
Well, it happened to me. Actually, I'm not even Catholic. I'm a Russian Orthodox.
Oh,
okay.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And one of the interesting things is that I remember I was called once to the Emmaus program, and I was always postponing it because I said, well, I'm doing well. I have a nice life. I really don't have to spend much time with the Lord. And that Emmaus changed my whole life. And from there on also, it helped me to understand a lot of the things that today for me are really the important things in life. Okay, which is God, believe in God, which is believe in the family, and believe in when I'm talking about the family, is even in my case, I always said I'm heterosexual, and I'm very proud that I was able to procreate 4 kids that are today doing a lot better than I'm doing, and they are better persons than I am. So it's a different experience, but at the same time is when we're knocked by that moment of God. Usually here, I like to interrupt for a minute and mention a motivational phrase from somebody related to the area where you are. In your case, as a priest, I choose a wording from Apostle John. And,
love John the Apostle. Can't beat
well,
that.
Actually, he's a philosopher.
Absolutely, man.
And And the phrase says as follows: inner peace comes from deep connections with the divine. Cultivate a life of prayer and meditation to find serenity amidst chaos. And this is interesting because it also brings me to the Constitution of the United States. Because one of the great things of the Constitution of the United States and why it has been so long established and ruling the amount of people that we are, almost 400 million people, is that we are guided by some superior Lord. And that is one of the great things that made me be American. This is why I decided at a certain point that if I want to get another citizenship from Venezuelan, it was the American one, because I really believe that we are guided by a superior Lord.
Amen.
So now let's go a little bit about your second experience.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I just want to mention too about that beautiful quote that you shared. I love how it says cultivate. You know, it uses that word cultivate, which is a reminder that things just aren't just going to happen to us, that we have to put in the work. And then God provides. You know, God, when we give the Lord just a little bit, you know, he multiplies it. And it even kind of bleeds into my second experience I wanted to share, which had to do once I was getting really close to being ordained a priest. So like I said, we're in seminary for 9 years. After 8 years, we're ordained a deacon. And then the following year, a priest. So I was ordained a deacon, and that following summer, I received an assignment from Bishop Estevez at the time to go to St. Augustine's Catholic Church in Gainesville, Florida, which is on the campus of the University of Florida. And, you know, I grew up a Florida State Seminole. I mean, we wore garnet and gold all the time. I'm still a diehard Seminole fan. And so going to Gainesville, you know, I was like, this will be interesting, you know, and I more looked at it like, okay, this summer, just going to get through the summer, go back to seminary. I'm looking forward to getting ordained priest. It was kind of just like a stepping stone. I wasn't super thrilled or excited about being assigned there. It was more, okay, we'll go for these few months and kind of bide my time.
Usually cases like this, the Archbishop Estevez is the one that choose the place for you, or it's somebody that is studying your personality?
So he signs off on it. So the bishop would have say in it. It would go through the vocation director, who at the time was Father Stephen Zahler. So Bishop Estevez and Father Stephen assigned me there. And, yeah.
So they probably knew that you were not a Gator.
I'm sure they did know. I made it pretty abundantly clear to all those that know me. But yeah, I mean, you can look at my license plate on my truck. It's a Florida State Seminole, you know. So.
Well, one of my daughters is a Gator, so yeah. I have to be for the Gators.
Absolutely, man. You gotta support the family, no doubt. But you know, I went over there and my first week was okay, and then I just got to know some of the students. There were getting to have lunch every day with the students that are part of the Catholic Gators there at the church, getting to just hang out with them. We would play dominoes while they were studying. They would have music. We'd be talking. You know, I don't know how much studying they got done, but we had a great summer. And then I got to know some of the sisters. They have sisters out there that I became very close with. I ended up driving them all the way to Ohio that summer, the staff working in that area. And it came to the point that I really fell in love with that community. I loved going. I would go back and visit, you know, the couple years after that. And for me, it was just a moment of realizing that you never know what God has in store. You know, it can seem from the outside like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, you know, and I experienced this as a priest sometimes, even in the, you know, in the parish. We take care of a major hospital, downtown Jacksonville, Baptist downtown. And so we're on call 24/7, you know, and there might be a call in the middle of the night. Those are rare, but we get a lot of calls in the middle of the day, and you never know. It could be in the middle of, you know, I'm planning on meeting with someone, or I have my idea of what my afternoon's going to look like, and an emergency call isn't worked into that schedule, you know? And so whenever I get the call, it's like, oh man, I've got to get my truck. I've got to drive down there. But when I get there, when I'm with the people, it's the most fulfilling thing. And I'm like, why was I even worried about this? Like, why did this even, you know, and most of the time I am looking forward to going to the hospital, bringing the sacraments to the people and being with them.
Well,
but
because really you are not, at that moment, you are really not acting as Father Matthew. You are really acting as the word of the Lord.
Yeah, through the sacraments. Absolutely. When we celebrate Mass, or when we give the sacrament of anointing or hear confessions, it's acting in persona Christi, as we would say, in the person of Christ. And most of the time I'm looking forward to going, but there are some times it's like, oh, this is an inconvenient time to get called or whatever it may be. But then I go, and every time I go, it's like, it's a beautiful moment of just being with people. I was with a guy the other day, and his wife, she was going through a difficulty in terms of health, and he didn't know me at all. He knows nothing about Matt King, but he saw the collar and he started getting emotional. He's like, I'm so happy I'm Catholic. He's like, the church always comes when we call, that's one of the beautiful things about our faith, but it's also a beautiful gift I receive as a priest, being able to be there with people in those moments. Even if it's not in my schedule or but it's like, it's one of the highlights of my life, getting to walk with people in their suffering.
No, because really you become a father of a very large family.
Oh man, it's a lot of children in the church, including myself. I mean, I'm, in terms of the bishop, I try to have that childlike faith to the Lord. I'm always dependent on God, and the Lord has been very good to me.
Well, that is great to hear. And from the experience of the Seminole with the Gators, you really became grown. You decided to be a Gator, or?
I wouldn't go that far, but I did lose a bet that summer with a couple of the students. I don't even remember what we were betting on, but the bet was if I won, they had to wear Florida State gear. And sadly, I did not win. I lost. And so I had to put on a Florida Gators shirt and take a picture with them, and had to wear an orange and blue hat. And that picture's still floating around somewhere. It's not my favorite. But it was a good memory.
Well, that also reminds me, because my other son is an Aggie.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Texas A&M.
And actually, the day that he was registered in the school, the day I took him to the school to study there, was the day that you remember that they used to have this,
like a big bonfire.
Oh,
okay, I haven't heard of that.
Okay, they had usually between the Aggies and the University of Texas, they used to have a game that was very, very important. And the day that we arrived was supposed to be the bonfire, and suddenly I saw a lot of helicopters and a lot of firemen driving around. And it was because the bonfire fall and killed about 10 or 20 students. Wow. And then they suspended that for a while.
Yeah.
But it was, then they explained to me that it was so important to be an Aggie or to be a Longhorn in Texas that, for them was like a big symbol.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what happened to you when you saw that picture around.
College allegiances are no joke. Nothing to be trifled with.
Right. And if we go to a third experience, the third experience was, you said, something a lot harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this one, really reaches to the level of faith, of my relationship with God. And it happened while I was in the seminary. So I think I was in my 5th year at this point out of 9. And I had received a call in the middle of the night. One of my siblings, I have 4 younger siblings, was in trouble. And I was worried about, their physical health, that they were still going to be with us. I don't want to get necessarily into all the details of it, but it was about their soul, and so I just was so downtrodden. I remember at that point, having almost like these feelings of despair. And so I went outside my room and walked to the chapel at the seminary. Walked up to the chapel door, and again, it's like 2-3 in the morning. Door's locked, no one's there. And for safety reasons, we would lock it. And so I remember just sitting down outside with my back leaning against the door, and I was just weeping, but it was right at that moment I really felt the presence of God, and through His Blessed Mother, that He sent His mother to me, and she said, "Matt, pray a rosary, and I'll take care of your sibling." And that's exactly what I did. And after praying that rosary, I had so much peace. Like, I wasn't worried at all. It was almost a miraculous moment in my life where it didn't make sense that I wasn't worried, because objectively I could look at the issues and, the uncertainties of what was happening. And, but it really, God took away my fear, my, disturbance at that point. And it was when I needed it most. It was one of the darkest points, of my life, and most concern in my life. And so, just seeing how God can work through this negative experience. Thank God my sibling was, it turned out okay. It was a long road back, but everything, worked out well. But just how God
and
comes
she
to
and
us.
she really took care of him.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. The Blessed Mother's promise to me was, was there and true. And I still believe it to this day. And I still pray that rosary, to this day. And, I encourage everyone to pray the rosary. I mean, it's a very powerful prayer.
Well, I really think that the rosary for me has been an experience that I'm a believer in the Virgin since I studied in high school. And I studied with the Salesians.
Okay, yeah.
So we were educated to believe in Maria Auxiliadora.
Mm-hmm.
And during my life, I have had so many beautiful experiences that I decided that whenever I make a trip now, I try to combine it with a pilgrim trip to any place of the Virgin.
Oh, yeah.
So I have been blessed by the opportunity to be several times in Fatima because I'm investing in some projects in Portugal. And I have been blessed to go to Czestochowa, where our John Paul II was really where he found his faith. And I was able to visit the Mystic Rose in Montechiari, Medjugorje.
Wow.
And Maria Auxiliadora in Turin, where I had the opportunity even to go with a friend of mine, which is a priest from Venezuela. And we celebrated a Mass in the altar where John Bosco used to celebrate his Mass.
Yeah.
And it was very beautiful because we were the two of us celebrating the Mass one afternoon at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And it was the day, October 22nd, which is the day of St. John Paul II. So she always have shown me this kind of beautiful things.
Well, out of all those places that you visited dedicated to Our Lady, do you have a favorite? I mean, is it the place where Don Bosco Salesians?
I really think that I always say that the Virgin is a woman. And as a woman, she likes to dress with different dresses. Okay,
That's a good way to put it. I've never heard it put that way.
So it's for me, she's a great lady, a beauty. She's the most beautiful lady that we know. And by changing dresses, the only thing is that she shows to the people of that location as one of them.
Well, and we're blessed here in this diocese to have Nuestra Senora de la Leche, down in St. Augustine.
Actually, it was for the coronation of the.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was a special event. I was there as well, and that's really where my vocation blossomed. Was going and praying at the shrine of Our Lady of La Leche, and and having that devotion to Our Lady. But it wasn't really as concrete as it became after that experience, and so. Well,
I really think she has a way, like the Lord, they have a way to communicate with us, and sometimes when we don't understand something, the best way is to say, okay, let me pray the Rosary, and then it will clarify.
Absolutely. Yeah. And somehow an answer comes, you might not even be thinking about it. You're thinking about the Rosary and praying through the mysteries, but God reveals it slowly to us. It's absolutely true.
It is very difficult for a priest to prepare a homily every Sunday.
That's a great question. It varies week to week. The goal in an ideal week, I'll read through the readings on Monday for the next upcoming Sunday. And then, kind of thinking about it, I always check the news because it's important as a priest. We have the Bible in one hand, the newspaper in the other, because it's important to know what the people that we're preaching to and ourselves of what, where they're at, what are their concerns, and how do the scriptures that week apply to their lives and apply to our lives. And so that's always my goal. So I'll go through that. And then about, Thursday, Friday, I'm sitting down working on it. Usually 5 to 6 hours is what I'll dedicate to my weekend homily. Of course, we have daily Mass homilies, and those are significantly shorter preparation time. It'll be that's half an hour maybe. So
but it's very very interesting what you're saying about how do you prepare it by combining, because for everybody that works in communication with people, I remember that Lee Iacocca, the guy that used to run Chrysler many years ago. He always said that he asked his assistants to tell him what was the profile of the people that he will address that day, and then he was able to prepare the speech based on the people that he would address. And it was very interesting because he always was very easy to communicate.
That's a great point. And I even think about, my first assignment was to Our Lady Star of the Sea Catholic Church in Ponte Vedra Beach, and I was there for 3 years. Now I've been at Assumption for over a year with you, and my homilies changed. At Star of the Sea, they were a little bit different, and because this is a different kind of community, and honestly, different masses, they change. Like if you come to the 8:00 Mass, I'll preach one way, but, which a lot of times the 8:00 Mass is a little bit of an older crowd. You don't go to the 8, do you? I'm not calling you old, but a little bit of an older crowd. Whereas the 5 p.m. Sunday Mass typically is a lot of teenagers. It's our youth Mass. And so I'll tweak my homily, based on the people.
Well, in my case, I'm not concerned because I'm a perennial.
There you go.
And a perennial is a millennial with experience.
I like that, man. A perennial. I haven't heard that one.
So I'm a perennial.
There you go. That's great.
So, no, Father, really it's a pleasure to hear the stories from you, Blessing in Disguise, because I really think that, again, we have to bring positive news to the people because the history of the human being has been the same always. A friend of mine, which is a pastor in Las Vegas, can you imagine how difficult it has to be a pastor in Las Vegas?
No, I can't.
Okay, but he's a pastor in Las Vegas, and we were discussing that a few months ago, and he told me that the world, for him, the world has been like a series in Netflix. We are now in the season 4, in the chapter 5. Okay, but the story is just a repetitive story of something that already happened. And I always mention that for me, when you consider that today you can find some people that is behaving with a negative attitude, then you start to say, and what happened to Cain and Abel? Okay, when God asked him, hey guy, where's your brother?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have to take care of him. So at the end of the day, we have to bring these beautiful messages that we have the opportunity to get and communicate them as much as we can to the people.
Totally, brother. It reminds me that, I forget who said it, but there's a great line that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it always rhymes. Like we kind of go through the secular experience of, just how things come back around. And like you said about the Cain and Abel story, that's why the biblical stories are so powerful and speak such powerful truths, is because they're so applicable to today and to our lives. And I love what you're doing with this show. And I just want to thank you because it's such a necessary thing. One of the spiritual themes that we have that comes from the great Saint Therese of Lisieux, who's a doctor of the church, she had this little motto she would say is that all is grace. Everything is grace, no matter what's happening, whether it's good, bad, joyful, sorrowful, ups and downs, all is grace because God's working in the midst of it somehow. And so continuing to, just to have that perspective on things as opposed to falling into just misery, and despair, but recognizing the grace of the moment is huge. And so, I just want to thank you, brother.
No, it is great. And to finish what you just said is great because for me, when the people ask me, who is a person in the church that I identify with, I would say Paul, St. Paul, because he was a guy that did all the wrong things in life as I have done. Mm-hmm. I feel very identified with him. And then suddenly you start to realize that this is not the way to go. And you start to change. And God is so great that allowed us to change during our lifetime in order to bring these messages. So thank you very much, Father, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, brother. It was an honor.
Bye.
We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. If that is the case, we kindly invite you to show your support by giving us a like and subscribing to this channel. Visit our website to explore a collection of positive quotes from past episodes, and feel free to send us a message suggesting topics or guests you would like to see on our podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to having you join us again soon.